1823 If 10 outlets are talking about Mr. Pecker. Mr. Blanche, Judge, the reason for the order is to make sure that witnesses that are going to come in here and testify are going to do so honestly and without fear of reprisal. And my point in reflecting on the intense scrutiny of every word said by every witness is that everybody can say whatever they want except for President Trump. They are not the court, defendants in this case, they are not subject to the gag order. That's a very significant issue that you are overlooking. I don't have authority over the press. I don't have authority over most of the people that are saying things. I couldn't possibly extend a gag order to them. I just don't have that authority. I don't see the comparison. I don't see the analogy between comparing your client, who is the defendant, and who is subject to the gag order, with 10 members of the press who wrote an article. Mr. Blanche, I'm not asking your honor for, and I am not comparing one to the other. Analogy. 1824 Whether President Trump has willfully violated the gag order beyond a reasonable doubt, it makes sense. The court has to look at what all the press and all the media and what Mr. Pecker was reading about his statements. And so, when you look at what President Trump said about his statements, it does matter. Matters to the willfulness, and it matters to whether the reason for the gag order is the court. If I may, I would like to ask you a question, and this has to do with what you are talking about. If we look at the first exhibit, I don't remember the exhibit letter, so I will call it number 1. When those statements were made, it was your client who went down to that open area and stood in front of the press and started to speak. It wasn't the press that went to him, he went to the press. He didn't need to go in that direction. Door that he uses is to the right. So you are telling me that, the nobody forced your client to go scrutiny is outrageous. Stand where he did that day. Judge, I agree with that, but 2 Mr. Blanche, responses. 1825 Respect to Mr. Cohen, which I will get to in a minute. And 2, nobody is forcing him, but he is running for president. He has to be able to speak. So, your honor is right, he can walk out there and go right, or he can walk out there and go left and make a statement which he is entitled to do and has to do, your honor. So we are not that's why he is being allowed to do the court, That's why that entire area has been set up the way that it is set up, to ensure that your client, as a candidate for presidency, has the opportunity to speak about absolutely anything he wants, including the district attorney of New York County, but there are just some things he cannot talk about. Mr. Blanche, your honor, I am going to talk about Mr. Cohen in a minute. I want to address, briefly, the second Pecker statement, which is Exhibit H to the People's Affirmation. And this statement is President Trump is asked the question, what have you thought of David Pecker's testimony so far? When was the last time you spoke to him? 1826 David's been very nice, a nice guy. Mean, he has been, and, again, he is responding to a question. Mr. Pecker had been on the stand for 2 days at this point. The government says that that's threatening and a warning to witnesses that they need to be nice. That's just not true. He is just responding to a question and saying he has been very nice. Your honor observed his testimony. There is no animosity between the two of them. There were threatening or menacing statements. Again, Mr. Pecker himself testified about their friendship and the relationship, and he would call him Donald, and that he had a great relationship with President Trump over the years. And we, again, put multiple articles in front of the court, again, not to compare, or not to say that that alone gives President Trump the right to say something, but when the court is considering whether the purpose of the gag order was frustrated by, he has been very nice. Mean, David's been very nice, it does matter. The court, just to save you time, I am not terribly concerned with that one. I think that there are situations where comments 1827 at this moment, based on what I saw and heard, I am not terribly concerned. Mr. Blanche will stop with that. I will talk about Mr. Cohen and the defendant. Judge, there are 2 statements the government, one was outside of the courtroom and one in response read to an interview. Again, the second one was on April 23rd. And, Judge, Mr. Cohen, and I am going to spend a few minutes on this because it's extremely important, in my view the most significant one, has been inviting and almost daring President Trump to respond to everything he has been saying. Again, personal attacks on his character, mocking him for being on trial and also his candidacy for presidency of the United States. So I just want to put a few up on the screen. The court, very quickly, please, I want you to make your argument. Mr. Blanche is sure. So, Exhibit 39, this goes to Mr. Cohen mocking President Trump on X. If we can go to page 2 and then 6 and 7, if we can blow it up a little just very quickly, we can. 1828 for the record, it has a photo of President Trump in an orange jumpsuit with a picture next to Nelson Mandela, and it's just a long repost by Mr. Cohen criticizing President Trump. And then we can turn to page 6 and page 7. And, again the court, what was the date on that? Mr. Blanche, that date, your honor, should be up at the top. April 8th of this year, your honor. And then pages 6 and 7, it's more of the same, if we can focus on the date, please, at the top, April 14th. And, again, keep messing with me Donald, and I won't send any money to your commissary, a comment by Mr. Cohen, and then something obnoxious. And then on page 7 at the top with the date first, please. And this is on April 16th, please don't forget we also mattered, reposting a photo of about the witnesses. President Trump. Next, if we can turn to Exhibit 64, quickly, please. And this one, Mr. Cohen, this one says, oh my, shits and pants. Keep whining and crying and violating the 1829 this was sent after the gag order was put in place. Exhibit 67, please. Again, from Mr. Cohen criticizing, again, your attacks on me stink of desperation. We are all hoping that you take the stand in your defense, with a picture of President Trump in this courtroom, and, again, that is on April 22nd. And then, finally, Exhibit 110. Again, this is before the gag order, Your Honor, April 4th. But, again, this is not necessarily Mr. Cohen criticizing President Trump about this trial, but about his business and his business ventures, Your Honor. So, again, there is a lot more. We picked 4 out of a hat. They are all in kind and all similar. So, the response, and now we are here again on a violation of the gag order as it relates to Mr. Cohen. These are responses to repeated and consistent attacks by him against President Trump, his character, his viability as a candidate, and, as you can see, Your Honor, it's also completely throughout the Mea Culpa podcast and on TikTok. There are repeated attacks on President Trump's candidacy for president by Mr. Cohen. And if we can go to page Exhibit 63, Excuse 1830 attack. I mean, there are repeated reports and, indeed, they are true, that Mr. Cohen has been shopping television shows based upon not only what he did for President Trump, and he is talking, but also what he has been doing here. About that and advertising what he is trying to do. And then, again, there is multiple examples of this in our exhibits. Exhibit 37, if we can bring up page 37.7, this is an April 12th political article quoting Mr. Cohen, talking extensively about President Trump's candidacy for president, criticizing him as someone that should not be voted for. On the same article, next page, says, Donald does not know how to tell the truth. He lied so many times, he can't keep track of the lies. And then just, very briefly, Your Honor, and I hope the point has been made, but we the court, you made your point. Mr. Blanche, well, okay. But I mean, on top of everything that I just put in, there is multiple examples of the Mea Culpa podcast that are over the top, about his character, about his 1,831 folks in this room, with reporters, who just blast President Trump from what he did as president, and what he would do if he is elected in November. Multiple, I'm not talking about 1 or 2. I'm talking multiple, in excess of 10, way in excess of 10. Finally, as has been reported, because it's true, Mr. Cohen has started going on TikTok nightly and literally making money. So, there is, apparently, a way you can make money with people doing things. While they are watching you on TikTok, he actively encourages folks to give him money. You can see that he has made money. His TikTok repeatedly criticizes President Trump. He said, as recently as April 29th, mocking and almost poking President Trump as it relates to the gag order, I am not the defendant in a criminal matter, and I am not the subject of Judge Merchan's gag order. Is right. And that is after criticizing him extensively. This is not a man that needs protection from the gag order. When you look at what President Trump said about Michael Cohen out here, and then in response to the questions from the interviewer, he wasn't talking about 1832, he was talking about his quality as a lawyer. Was talking about the fact that he was a convicted liar, that he had been prosecuted for lying. COURT, can I ask you to address the comments that were made about the jury? Mr. Blanche, yes, that was my last. So, the government read the statement that it, a 15-second statement out of an interview that was over 21 minutes long. And this was right in the middle of the interview in response to a number of questions about policy, and we can exclude the entire interview, but the policy, first about the types of questions that mattered voters, but this trial matters to voters. There was a question about this trial. As you know, Your Honor is very well aware, very much believe that this is a political persecution and this is a political trial. And part of that belief and part of President Trump's belief is the location of this trial. The fact that he is being tried in a jurisdiction that is over 90 or the court, did he violate the gag order? That's all I want to know. 1833 didn't, and laying the foundation. The court, so, I am not accepting your argument, which is why I am asking. Mr. Blanche, absolutely, positively not. The court, he spoke about the jury, right? Mr. Blanche, pardon me. The court, and he said that the jury was 95% Democrats, that the jury had been rushed through. And the implication being that this is not a fair jury. That's the implication that was given to anybody. This is not a fair jury. That heard that comment. Mr. Blanche, the gag order specifically references any prospective juror or any juror in this criminal proceeding. So, he wasn't referencing juror number 4 is a Democrat, or which, by the way, the press has noted and the press has highlighted, and the press has put on the screens who is Democrat and who is not registered. Again, he is talking about, again, in a passing phrase, about the overall proceedings being unfair and political, the jury, the court. Okay, it's 10 after 10. Is there anything you would like to say just to 1834? Mr. Blanche, Judge, again, we move to the jury, and I am done with Mr. Cohen. But Mr. Cohen, and the same things in our papers with respect to Ms. Daniels, where, when you go back, the court goes back and looks at the purpose of the gag order, as opposed to just blindly looking at the statements that are made by President Trump. It's not violating. Mean the constitutional limits that you put on the gag order, that Your Honor put on the gag order, are for good reasons. Because President Trump has to be able to talk extensively and to respond to questions in a way that don't violate the integrity of these proceedings. And as we said today, Mr. Cohen should not be part of this gag order. He does not need to be protected. The same is true for Ms. Daniels. She is not part of the 4 statements, but she is very similar, although not as voluminous, comments about President Trump personal, candidacy for presidency, and how he was president last time. They are not people that need to be protected, and to the contrary, he has to be able to respond to those. Judge. The court understand your argument. 1835, is there anything else on this point from either side? Mr. Steinglass, no. The court, bring the jury in. Let's take 5 minutes before we the court think we can get the witness back on the stand, please. Keith, court officer, witness entering. Whereupon, the witness entered the courtroom and was properly seated. The court, good morning, sir. Welcome back. I remind you that you are still under oath. Davidson, herein, called as a witness, being previously sworn, examined, and testified further as follows. Court officer, all rise. Jury entering. Whereupon, the jury entered the courtroom and was properly seated. The court, please be seated. The clerk, all parties, all jurors are present and properly seated. Mr. Steinglass, yes. Mr. Steinglass. Continued direct examination by Mr. Stanglass. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Davidson. 1836. Good morning. Q. Since you got off the stand on Tuesday afternoon, have you and I discussed anything about the substance of your testimony? No. When we broke on Tuesday afternoon, you were talking about some of the email exchanges back and forth between you and Michael Cohen towards the end of October 2016. Do you remember? Eyes. I am now showing you People's Exhibit 168. It's sent evidence and being displayed to everyone. We'll just ask that we blow it up, and I am going to ask you to focus on the portion of the message that appears to be from Dylan Howard. Do you recognize that? Eyes. And what is the date of that email? October 26, 2016. And the time? 1837. Can you please read us the body of the email? Michael Keith. A next paragraph. Thank you for chatting with me earlier. Next paragraph. Confirming agreement on, and there are 3 bullet points. Executed agreement hand-signed by Keith's client and returned via overnight for same-day FedEx to Michael. Next bullet point. Change agreement to reflect the correct LLC. And the final bullet point is, transfer funds on Thursday a.m. to be held in escrow until receipt of agreement. Thank you both, Dylan. And who is this email sent to by Dylan? 8. Sent to Michael Cohen and I. What is your understanding of what this email was about? This email followed a conference call, between Dylan and I with Michael Cohen. That conversation took place because there was difficulty in communications with Michael Cohen, and I had lost trust in what he was telling me. And Dylan came in as the mediator and sort of mediated. 1838. What was the reason for losing trust with Michael Cohen? I believed he was not telling me the truth. About what? The delays in the funding. Okay, I now want to show you Exhibit 285 in evidence, and I am going to blow it up and ask you, is this another email exchange between yourself and Michael Cohen? Eyes. And what is the subject line of the email? A wire on behalf of Essential Consultants LLC. And what is the date of this email? October 27, 2016. And does it appear as though, if you were going chronologically, it would start at the bottom and go up? Eyes. What is the time of the first email? 6:47 a.m. And is this, to be clear, is this document produced by you and retrieved from your service in California? I don't know. We can show you the bait stamp and see if this helps you to answer the question. Yes, it was produced by me pursuant to subpoena. 1839. The body of the first email in the chain from Michael Cohen to you say? A. Keith. Next paragraph. Kindly confirm that the wire received today, October 27, 2016, shall be held in your attorney's trust account until such time as directed for release by me in writing. Next paragraph. Additionally, please ensure that all paperwork contains the correct name of Essential Consultants LLC. Next paragraph. I thank you in advance for your assistance and look forward to hearing from you later. Next paragraph. Yours, Michael Cohen. Managing Member, Essential Consultants LLC. And did you respond? Eyes. At what time? 7:02 p.m. And how did you respond? I confirm that I will work in good faith and that no funds shall be disbursed unless and until he personally signs all necessary settlement paperwork, parentheses, the form of which will match the prior agreement, in parentheses. Settlement docs will name the correct corporation, parentheses, 1840. Next paragraph. Signature will be notarized and returned to you via FedEx. Only after you receive the FedEx, I will disperse. Next paragraph. Fair. So let me just ask you a quick question here. The draft of this agreement, I believe you testified, was exchanged between you and Michael Cohen back on October 11th of 2016? The 10th or the 11th? Okay, at that time, was the entity that Michael Cohen was using to fund this deal called Resolution Consultants? Eyes. And at some point between then and the final documents, did the entity name change? A did. And what did it change to? Essential Consultants LLC. Whereupon, Principal Court Reporter, Susan Pierspates was relieved by Senior Court Reporter, Lisa Kramsky. 1841. The following proceedings are continued from the following page. Continued direct examination by Mr. Stanglass. I now want to pull back up Exhibit 176A, which is in evidence, and display page 12, lines 536 to 537. Is this a part of that long series of texts between yourself and Dylan Howard? Eyes. And of these two that we've blown up, what is the date on these texts? October 27, 2016. What do the texts say? From Dylan Howard to me, money wired, I am told. Did you have an understanding as to who told Dylan Howard that the funds had been wired? I assumed that it was Michael Cohen. He was the only other one involved. And what about your response? Of funds received. And did you, in fact, receive these funds as a wire from Essential Consultants on October 27, 2016 into your escrow account? A. Exchange. Yes. Turning to page 13. Just to continue this text, what, if anything, did Mr. Howard say? Unbelievable. And you? I was never really sure. 1842 QN. Did Stormy Daniels have to re-sign the original settlement agreement and the side letter agreement now that the name of the entity that was funding the deal had been changed from Resolution Consultants to Essential Consultants? She did. I am now showing you what's in evidence as People's Exhibit 276. Do you recognize these documents? Eyes. What are they? This looks to be the cover page, page 1, of the Confidential Settlement Agreement and Mutual Release Assignment of Copyright and Non-Disparagement Agreement between relating to Stormy Daniels. And whom? Donald Trump.